Hey, everybody. Happy day. It's official. We're in ketosis. So, here's what I want to share about today. I want to talk about our experience with testing for ketones. My partner and I are on day 18 of our great vegetarian keto experiment. And my goodness, haven't we learned a lot? As a dietitian, I felt like I already knew a lot about the diet, sort of academically at a research level, but to actually give it a go and do it ourselves has been eye-opening. So before we get to the most exciting part, the testing and the results, I do want to share that on days 16, 17, and 18, my partner's been having some muscle cramps, pain in her limbs, and probably that's due to sodium being too low and other fluctuations with electrolyte balance. It's pretty common, and she's been someone who sort of goes after a lower sodium diet. Looking at her diet tracker, her sodium's definitely low. And typically, because of the changes to fluid balance with the keto diet, unless you've got something else going on medically, it's not a great time to restrict sodium. And in fact, you want to be a little bit liberal with some of that wonderful sea salt. We've been using a lot of lemon sea salt and truffle oil scented sea salt and smoky bourbon maple sea salt, all adding a gorgeous flavor on top and helping maintain, for me, seems like great electrolyte balance, no cramps, nothing to complain about here. And so now we've got her bumping up the salt levels, and we'll see if that doesn't help ease up those cramps. So that's just one little note. Now, she had worried that if she was having those cramps, she thought maybe I'm not in keto, maybe I still have the keto flu and I'm not in ketosis. It's been over 2 weeks. She was feeling really demoralized and discouraged that maybe, even though we've both been keeping our carbs around right around 30 grams a day or less, sometimes a couple grams more, sometimes a couple grams less, but around 30 grams a day, wondering, is this working? And I reported about these little keto test strips a few videos ago. They've been miserable. Okay, here's what they look like. And you expose that little tip to urine, you stick it in a cup, or you just pee on it, and then you compare it to the little chart here to see if you're in ketosis. And we've been trying and trying and trying, and basically we never actually even matched any of those. Neither of us did. We just looked like we had a wet little stick, and none of those colors ever came up for us. So that was disappointing. I don't know if this is a bad batch of the sticks, but excuse me. Oh, sneezy. I don't know if it's a bad batch of the sticks, but we're over them. Done, because we have upgraded. Today we got blood and glucose, and a blood meter for glucose and ketones, and we're able to finally give ourselves a test using a little finger prick. I'll show you what's in the little kit. We've got the meter itself. This is where here, I'll show you. I'm trying to do it backwards and watch the screen, but you turn it on. There you go. It turns on, and you use little tiny strips that you put up in there. Put the little tiny strip up there. You use this little gizmo to poke your finger. It didn't hurt me at all. She kind of whinged about it. Put a drop of blood on the strip, and it's gonna go do, really quick read, and it tells you your ketone levels, which, happy days. Both of us registered positive for ketones in our blood. meaning we are officially in ketosis. I was at 0.9. She was at 1.4. And I will just tell you the difference in morale for her was huge. I was pretty sure I was in ketosis. I've got that minerally metallic taste in my mouth. And I was pretty sure I was there, but she was feeling really discouraged. So seeing those numbers on the meter really gave her a boost and an encouragement to keep going right when she was feeling pretty demoralized. She's only lost a couple of kilos, and as I've mentioned all along, she had a goal to lose probably a little more than a couple, looking to lose maybe 5 kilos over the whole experiment, knowing that 1 or 2 of those would be water weight. So she hasn't seen the weight change she wanted to see and was feeling really discouraged until we saw the actual numbers coming up on the meter, proof positive. Our efforts are working. We are officially in ketosis, meaning that our bodies are tapping into our fat stores for energy. And that's the goal. That's what we want to have happen. So that was awesome. We looked around to decide what the right meter would be. You always are going to have to buy extra stuff, whether you're going with the strips and you need to keep buying the strips. They only work well in the early days of ketosis anyway, if they ever work at all, which I doubt. But if you get the breath meter, those you typically have to buy the little mouth parts for again and again over time. For this meter that we got, we will have to purchase new strips from time to time if we want to keep testing. And also the lancets, those are the little needle tips that go into this gizmo to be able to poke the finger. So there's always going to be new equipment to buy, but all in, this wasn't too bad. The device itself, the meter itself, was $50 at my local chemist. And then with all the paraphernalia, I did end up tipping $100, a little bit more than $100 at the end of buying all the gizmos. I did go with the blood glucose and ketone combined meter because I'm curious to do some blood glucose tracking once I'm off the vegetarian keto experiment and see what the blood glucose measurements look like getting back into a more regular eating pattern. But all in all, the morale boost was worth $100. Otherwise, it's been a low impact diet cost-wise. I'll also say we were concerned that the weekly shop would go up, that it would be expensive to buy all of these high-fat foods. We're thinking cheese, smoked salmon for her. She's pescatarian, not vegetarian. Heavy whipping cream. We're thinking all these expensive ingredients and really thought that the costs would go up. But we haven't actually seen a real shift in our spending habits. We may be eating less, and the vegetables that we're eating are not expensive. Cabbage and capsicum and mushrooms are low in carbs and pretty cheap to buy too. So far it's been a cost neutral experiment, except for our ketone meter. So I guess one thing I want to touch base on who I'm thinking this diet would work well for from more of a psychological standpoint and who it might not work well for. My partner's a research scientist, and so all of the number crunching that we do with this diet, that's right up her alley. Balancing the ratios of macronutrients and grams of this and that, being able to measure things like ketones and look at it on a chart of trends over time. She likes all of that. And yet she has also been commenting, now that we're a couple weeks in and the glamour has worn off, it's starting to feel a little bit like a restrictive diet mentality for her. She does want to lose some weight, so she is paying attention to that calorie cap. And despite the hype, keto is not an all fat, all the time diet. Eat as much fat and butter as you want and you'll still lose weight. Like, this just is not true. So she's having to keep a bit of an eye on that to reach her goals, and feeling like it's a little bit diet restriction-y. So that points to, on the plus side, you know, if you love numbers and geeking out with numbers, this might be a diet that would be actually fun for you, or one that you can really track some metrics and see some measurable changes over time. However, I think for anyone who tends toward really compulsive thinking around food, really reacts poorly to restriction around food and trying to keep that limit, keep that willpower limit on and not eat any more today, because you're over your calorie limit, like that can just be crazy making for some of us and may not be the most balanced and healthy and natural relationship that we want to have with our food. It's already a pretty strained and weird relationship to be so restricted and focusing on weighing and measuring so much. So I reckon if you can do it with a sense of neutrality or even fun and enjoyment, that's one thing. But some of us get a little compulsive and a little tight around that kind of thing. So it might not be a great diet for that kind of psychology. There's a ton of other diets out there that work just as well for weight loss and could also help you meet some of the other health goals that you might be looking at with your vegetarian keto approach. So this is by far not the only option out there. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about today is combining vegetarian keto diet with something like a intermittent fasting or 1 meal a day approach. Heaps and heaps of people are doing this online, and I just have a couple of thoughts about it. One is, you know, we know there's a lot of research coming out now around restricting the time in which we're eating to a shorter period, and that intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding schedule seems to be really helpful for many people. There's a lot of different ways you could do it. You could do alternate day fasting. You could just do cutting down the number of hours you eat in a given day. There's no right or wrong way to do it. There's research on lots of different patterns. Most of it's positive. So that, in that regard, it's really what would work well for you. Something that can make keto and time-restricted eating work really well together is that the high protein and high fat component of the keto diet with the low carbs, which mean that you're not having the blood sugar swings that you would with a higher carb diet, that can really keep cravings tamped down. So you just feel steady, you're not having the hunger cravings or the hunger pangs and the cravings. So it can make it easy to restrict that time in which you're eating. I do have a concern about the 1 meal a day folks out there doing this. It's hard to meet all of our nutrient requirements on as restricted a diet as keto is. We're just about managing it in our house with a lot of time and attention and the occasional multivitamin. But it's a lot of work. It's not easy. And really, to get down to only 1 meal a day, I think there's a big risk of not getting the nutrient balance in that we actually do need for longevity and health and energy. So it's balancing all these different factors. Great, I'm losing weight, you know, great, I don't have any hunger cravings. Those are all good things for some of us from a keto type approach, but there's also the risk that there could be some long-term damage done if we're not meeting all of our nutrient needs. So looking for that balance and finding it for ourselves, finding it with someone who has expertise and can help check out what those nutrient needs are for us individually could help make the keto diet sustainable and fun and a real health boost for those of us who want to give it a try. I'm still having fun, and we're going to keep going. We've got a couple more weeks to go on this experiment. So hopefully I'll be getting back to you with quicker, simpler, easier ways to cook. January is heating up. We're getting busy again after the holidays, and we don't have the 2 to 4 hours a day to cook these fancy and scrumptious keto meals. So streamlining and simplifying, that is the next topic Wishing you all a ton of luck if you are giving vegetarian keto a try, if this is something you're experimenting with in your life or that you're curious to experiment with. Wishing you a lot of fun and a lot of luck with it. Like I said, I'm having a blast. So feel free to leave any comments about what you're doing that's working for you, questions you have about it, and I'll get back to them at a different time. Until then, yay! Happy confirmation. It's official. We're in ketosis. I'm the same person that I was yesterday, but it's nice to have it be official. Okay, thank you so much for your time and attention.